First, our popular Art Talk series. The artist for this week's Art Talk is Albrecht Dürer, one of my personal favorite artists. He's a German Renaissance draftsman, engraver, woodcutter, and painter. Now, after 500 years, he remains actually one of the most famous and important artists in the history of art. Now, over to Sarah with Art Talks on Albrecht Dürer. Hello, Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. So yes, we're talking about German Renaissance painter Albrecht Dürer. So Dürer was born in the city of Nuremberg in 1471 to Albrecht and Barbara Dürer as the third eldest child of 18 kids. That's a lot of kids. His father, a successful goldsmith, had moved to Nuremberg from Hungary. And Dürer started an apprenticeship in his father's workshop at the age of 13, but showed such exceptional talent as a draftsman that at 15, he began to apprentice under a painter, much to the displeasure of his father. He spent time traveling around Europe to gain inspiration and knowledge for his craft. And specifically, his time in Italy really influenced him. And he took techniques with him back to Germany, where he opened his own workshop. So, and actually this piece was created just before his 29th birthday, and art historians note its resemblance to Christ and a religious portrait, including its symmetry, the dark tones, and kind of the manner in which the artist directly confronts the viewer and raises his hand to the middle of his chest as if in the act of blessing. And we'll see religion play a role in many of Dürer's other pieces. So the Dresden altarpiece is a triptych or a three-paneled piece completed around 1496 and 97. Differently from most triptychs, the side shutters could not be closed due to the use of canvas. But the central scene depicts the Madonna adoring the child who sleeps on a cushion over a wide parapet. A book symbolizing the holy texts lies next to him, together with a pear, an allegory of the original sin. And it's also likely that Mary in this piece was modeled after Albrecht's wife, Agnes. This work was initially commissioned by Jacob Fugger, an intermediary between Emperor Maximilian I and Pope Julius II. And the piece was to be hung in the German National Church in Venice, Italy. So Dürer spent time painting this piece in Venice, and there was a lot of anticipation being built up for the final piece. The Doge of Venice even visited Dürer's workshop and eventually offered for Dürer to be the official painter for the Republic of Venice, to which Dürer declined, but that just shows how remarkable this piece was and, the effect that it had on his career. The commission for this piece specifically stated that it had to portray the Feast of the Rosary because German expatriates in Venice were particularly devoted to Our Lady of the Rosary. So now we'll focus on a few of Dürer's animals. Young Hare is a watercolor painted in 1502 and is one of the most famous examples of Dürer's study of nature and animals. And the artwork is significant, not only because it demonstrates Dürer's craftsmanship, but also because it provides insight into Dürer's understanding of the relationship between art and nature. The Renaissance brought about the development of new techniques of representation, such as the study of proportions, perspective, and imitation of nature. And his travels to Italy specifically influenced his techniques, and he was really one of the first German Renaissance painters to practice these techniques. So here's another example of an animal he portrayed. And Dürer was really ahead of his time in putting so much focus and effort on depicting animals. At this time, animals really weren't seen as fitting subjects for quote unquote serious art until the 18th century. So this famed woodcut of a rhinoceros was created from a written description and a sketch by an unknown artist. And although it's not entirely an accurate rendering of the animal, Dürer's rhinoceros was still treated as such up until the late 18th century when more realistic portrayals were created. And this rhinoceros came to be colloquially named as Clara, which I think is cute. So I just want to take a moment to look at this piece compared to, for example, Feast of the Rosary. And just look at how different these two pieces are. They're different subject matter, different mediums, and altogether look like different artists. So it just shows how wide a breadth of mastery Dürer had. This sketch is made with ink and pencil on blue paper that the artist made himself, and was produced not as a standalone work, but as a preliminary drawing towards a larger altarpiece. And around the 1930s, this piece has been reproduced so many times and still has relevance in pop culture and religion today. But in around the 1930s, a fable arose about the hands in this sketch, and postulating that they were the hands of the artist's brother, worn from work and immortalized in this drawing. However, it's much more likely that the artist modeled the drawing on his own hands. This print is a very early depiction of melancholia or depression, and it's an integral image both in the production of the myth of the, quote, suffering artist, but also in the progression of artists' depictions of their own mental health and anguish. In this composition, a winged female figure is deep in contemplation, absent-mindedly holding a compass in her right hand. She wears a wreath and is surrounded by numerous objects, all of which have a particular symbolic meaning. And art historian Erwin Panofsky famously described this work as Dürer's spiritual self-portrait, kind of a reflection of the artist's own melancholia or depression. And in the Renaissance, melancholy was also believed to be closely linked to creative genius. This engraving depicts the goddess of retribution, and where we get the word nemesis from today. She holds a bridle in one hand for restraining the wicked and a goblet in the other for rewarding the just. She exercises her unpredictable power over the world, which is symbolized by the sphere on which she balances, and the landscape under the cloud pulled back like a veil. And Dürer's exquisite use of detail identifies the town as Chiusa in northern Italy. So another example of him being inspired by Italy. So Dürer did a whole series on the apocalypse. And this is the third woodcut of 15 pieces in a series, all taken from the book of Revelations. It depicts the 4 apocalyptic riders as they're described in the Old Testament. So from left to right, we see death, famine, war, and plague on their horses, trampling on a group of helpless people. An angel oversees the scene with dramatic clouds and rays of light in the background. And Dürer dramatically captures the panic and chaos of the end of times by filling almost the entire page with painstaking detail. So Dürer had a huge influence on the artists of succeeding generations, especially with printmaking. And printmaking was the medium through which most of his contemporaries experienced his art, as his paintings were predominantly in private collections located only in a few cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so interesting to hear about his impact on printmaking and graphics.
Indeed, yeah, the detail in the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, I think it's just absolutely incredible. And I, of course, love the woodcutting of Clara the Rhinoceros. And it's just, it's really fascinating that if it weren't for Dürer, I think graphic artists and printmakers today would probably be a little bit of a different profession. He really had a huge influence on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. All right.